Hey guys, and welcome to MMA StatBot. Today we're breaking down Nunes vs Aldana at UFC 289. Today we'll be looking at fight records, striking stats, grappling stats, and an analysis of various in-fight stats and their implications. Starting off with records, Nunes is 16 wins and 3 losses, whereas Aldana is only 7 wins and 4 losses. It's pretty clear that Nunes' win-loss ratio is significantly better. Now let's look at the quality of the opponents they've faced. The combined record of fighters Nunes has fought is 142 wins and 73 losses, whereas the UFC record of fighters Aldana has fought is 62 wins and 47 losses. Comparing the win-loss ratios, we can see Nunes has faced significantly tougher competition, which is as expected with all her title defenses fighting the best in the UFC. If we look at the combined record of the opponents each of these fighters have beaten, we can see for Nunes, the opponent she has beaten has a combined record of 122 wins and 59 losses, whereas the fighters Aldana have beaten have a combined record of only 27 wins and 28 losses. Looking at the win-loss ratio, we can see that fighters Aldana has beaten, on average, lose more fights than they win. This is the can crusher stat in full effect. If we look at the combined record of UFC fighters that have defeated Nunes, we can see they have a record of 20 wins and 14 losses in the UFC, whereas for Aldana, they have a record of 35 wins and 19 losses. It's interesting to note that the win-loss record of fighters that have beaten Nunes are worse than the win-loss record of those who she has beaten. If we look at methods of victory, we can see that Nunes has 5 decision wins with an enormous 8 KOs and 3 submissions, whereas Aldana has 3 decisions, 3 KOs and 1 submission. If we look at the loss methods, it's interesting to see that Nunes has never lost a decision and has only lost by being finished, whilst Aldana has never finished and has only been lost in a decision. Noting that 2 of those decisions were split decisions, and if those decisions go the other way, her record is 9-2 in the UFC. Let's look at the general striking stats. Nunes has a clear edge in striking accuracy of 12%, although Aldana has the defensive edge with an extraordinary 60% strike defense. Aldana is also the more active fighter, averaging 5.39 strikes per minute compared to 4.4 for Nunes. Now we'll have a look at some stats in a bit more detail. Firstly, looking at Nunes' striking accuracy. We can see there is not much interesting to see here and no significant outliers or trends. But if we look at her opponent's significant strike accuracy, we can see something interesting. All of her losses have occurred when her opponents land at 58% accuracy or higher. Therefore, the blueprint to beat Nunes is to have a high strike accuracy. Now, looking at Aldana's significant strike accuracy, historically it's been quite low, but we can see an enormous rise in her past 2 fights, rising by 17% in her last 2 fights compared to the 3 before that. She'll need to keep this high to have a remote chance of victory against Nunes. However, if we look at her opponent's significant strike accuracy, we can see it was extremely low against Vieira and Melo, but has increased in her past 3 fights against better opponents. Now, back to Nunes, let's look at knockdowns. We can see Nunes has a 100% win rate when landing a knockdown and has landed a knockdown in 32% of her fights, so if Amanda lands big, she wins. Interestingly enough, we can see that she has never been knocked down herself, and therefore a big shot isn't necessarily the way to beat her. Now, looking at Aldana's knockdowns, we can see that she has landed 3 of her knockdowns in her past 4 fights. And similar to Nunes, she has a 100% win rate with a knockdown, so Aldana has been more accurate and more punishing with her strikes in her past 4 fights. Also, looking at opponent knockdowns for Aldana, we can see she has only been knocked down once in her UFC career and has a 10-fight streak without being knocked down. Therefore, since both fighters rarely get knocked down, we can be in for a long night. Now, let's look at grappling. Comparing the offensive grappling for the fighters, Nunes has a clear edge, averaging 2.61 takedowns per 15 minutes compared to only 0.2 for Aldana, and averaging 56% takedown accuracy compared to 50% for Aldana. However, both fighters have extraordinary takedown defense of above 80%, therefore Aldana might be able to hold off takedowns from Nunes, making the fight much more interesting. Nunes also has the advantage in submissions attempted, averaging 0.8 per 15 minutes compared to only 0.3 for Aldana. Taking a closer look at takedowns for Nunes, we can see she has a 72% win rate when she lands a takedown and has landed 5+ takedowns in 3 of her last 5 fights. However, it's interesting to note that she has landed a takedown in each of her 3 losses, meaning that if she gets a takedown, it's not a guaranteed win. Next, if we look at takedowns conceded by Nunes, we can see she conceded takedowns in both of her UFC losses and has only been taken down in 2 other fights. This means she has a 50% loss rate when taking down, and getting Nunes to the ground is therefore a very valid way of beating her. However, it's unlikely that Aldana will even attempt this. Next, looking at takedowns for Aldana, we can see she has only landed 2 takedowns in her UFC career, and therefore it's highly unlikely we'll see her wrestle Nunes. If we look at takedowns conceded, we can see that she has had a problem with takedowns recently. Holly Holm landed 5 takedowns on Aldana and handed her a 50-44, 50-45, 50-45 loss. Next, against Kieson, she conceded 3 takedowns and was on her way to a decision loss before landing a Hail Mary body kick from the bottom. So looking at this, it's likely that Nunes' wrestling is going to cause huge problems for Aldana. If we look at control time for Nunes, we can see that in each of her losses, she had nearly 200 seconds worth of control time. Therefore, even if she gets a large amount of control time, she has not locked in the win. In addition to this, if we look at her opponent control times, we can see that she has a 100% loss rate when conceding 175 seconds of control time or more. Therefore, holding her down is pivotal to beating her. Unfortunately, I can't see Aldana doing this. Looking at control time for Aldana, we can see she only has very little and a maximum of 86 seconds in a fight. But if we look at her opponent's control time, we can see something very interesting. She has only been taken down in 4 fights, and in each of those fights, she's conceded a large amount of control time. Therefore, it seems if she gets taken down, she tends to not get up, which could be huge trouble if Nunes gets her down. To summarise the key tipping points of this fight, Nunes has a 72% win rate when she lands a takedown, but Aldana has 81% takedown defense. But if she gets taken down, she concedes more than 200 seconds of control time. Therefore, takedown defense of Aldana is of utmost importance if she wants a chance of victory. We can also see that Nunes has a 100% loss rate when her opponents strike at 58% accuracy or higher, and Aldana has had an average striking accuracy of 54% in her past 2 fights. Therefore, if Aldana can keep this number high, she stands a chance of overwhelming Nunes on the feet, similar to what Pena did. We also have seen that Nunes has never been knocked down, and Aldana has not been knocked down in her past 10 fights, so seeing a finish on the feet is something we should not expect in this fight, especially a big knockout. Therefore, my 2 predictions from this fight are either Nunes lands bulk takedowns on Aldana and holds her down for the majority of the fight, and wins a 50-45 decision. This prediction is much more likely. However, if Aldana avoids the takedowns early and keeps her high strike accuracy of her past 2 fights, she has a chance to overwhelm Nunes on the feet in a similar way Pena did, potentially making Nunes quit and getting a standing TKO stoppage on the feet. That's the end of this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all the good things, and I'll see you later.